California, to a rural ranch like moved. Alyssa thrived in high school, getting both A's and B's. To her friends, she looked normal, she wrote poems, and loved to joke around. She was also an Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But something snapped in her in 2007. She attempted suicide. Her grandparents realized that she was suffering from some mental health problems and decided to get her help. She stayed at a psychiatric hospital for 10 days and was prescribed antidepressants. Soon after this, she began cutting herself and often showed her scars to her friends. Alyssa then became an entirely different person online. Her Twitter feed talked about hating authority, and on her YouTube and MySpace, she listed her hobbies as cutting and killing people. More disturbing, in one of her YouTube videos, she tried to get two of her brothers to touch an electrified fence. Then she asked her sister to invite her neighbor, 9-year-old Elizabeth Bolton, to come play at their house. Elizabeth often visited Alyssa's home, playing with her and her siblings. That day, Elizabeth begged her mother to let her go out and play at Alyssa's house. Although it was late, she allowed her daughter to go for a few minutes, and she left their house at 5 p.m. But an hour later, when she still hadn't come home, her mother knew something was wrong. The next day, the FBI interviewed Alyssa regarding Elizabeth's disappearance. They also searched her home and seized her diary. Authorities then found a shallow grave in the backyard. Alyssa said she simply liked to dig holes, but further investigation revealed there was another shallow hole in the area, and this one contained Elizabeth's body. Alyssa was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Authorities revealed a journal entry that stated how she had killed someone. She admitted strangling, slitting their throat, and stabbing them. She also said it was amazing. In court, she also confessed to the killing. The defense argued that Alyssa's depression and her medications resulted in her doing the act. Alyssa Bustamante was tried as an adult. She pleaded guilty and accepted a plea deal for second-degree murder to avoid the death penalty. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Number 4. Facebook death lists. No one knows for sure who posted it, who created it, and why, but police in a southwestern Colombian town were baffled when a 69-name hit list was posted on Facebook in a span of 10 days. According to Colombian police, they believe the hit list was posted and distributed online by criminal gangs trying to instill fear and anguish in the local community. Not only were the names posted on Facebook for everyone to see, but they were also sent to several people whose names were on the list. The threat was that those whose names were on there needed to leave town within 3 days, otherwise they would be killed. The first portion of the list was distributed on Facebook and MSN Messenger on August 15, 2010, and 2 more lists were then issued. Soon enough, at least 3 teens, 16-year-old Diego Jaramillo, 19-year-old Norby Vargas, and 16-year-old Ibar Ruiz Munez were shot dead. Another teen, Juan Palo Anacona, who was 16, was wounded in the attack as well. All of them were named on the list. The killings in Puerto Asis, Colombia are baffling, and authorities don't know why these teens were being targeted. The individuals mentioned were known to be regular high school kids who stayed out of trouble. Out of fear, many of the teens on the list are weary of allowing people who are not their friends to message them on Facebook. However, those who are familiar with Puerto Asis will realize its familiar history along with much of southwestern Colombia. The area used to be the main ground for the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, known as AUC. This was a paramilitary force backed by the government against the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. AUC often used military force and intimidated people to take back rebel-controlled areas. These same tactics are now copied by criminal and narco gangs in order to make drug trafficking in the area easier. Residents of the small town have responded with a massive exodus, sending away their children regardless of their name being on the list or not. Colombian authorities have vowed to restore order and said they already made arrests and are asking for more information about the threats. Number 3. Daniel Garcia Manzano. There are several versions of this story online, though it's hard to determine which one is legitimate. This unusual happened. One story goes that Sarah Elston of Brisbane, Australia, was hoping for a reconciliation. Her ex-boyfriend, Daniel Garcia Manzano, had just messaged her on Facebook and suggested they meet up. Elston was a creative artist and once described Manzano as crazy, but a good kind of crazy. Manzano visited Elston in her apartment sometime in June of 2008, and when she turned her back, she was frantically stabbed with a knife. Several of the neighbors heard her screaming, but disturbances in the area were common, so her screams went ignored. It wasn't until the next day when Elston's body was found inside her apartment. Police arrested Daniel Garcia Manzano for the murder. It turns out Elston didn't know that Daniel was suffering from acute paranoid schizophrenia and was on medications. In fact, he was under an involuntary treatment order. Later on, he was found to be mentally unfit to stand trial and was placed in a secure psychiatric hospital indefinitely. However, there is another version of the story posted online, and this one was made by a commenter who said that Sarah Elston and Daniel were never a couple at all. Sarah, along with her friend, had been approached by Manzano while they were at a bar one time. He began following her home each night and became her stalker of sorts. Sarah was said to be friendly and a kind girl, and decided to approach Manzano in a friendly way to make him stop stalking her. One night she agreed to invite him over to her place. When Garcia arrived, Elston was with another friend at the time. Sarah asked her other friend to excuse himself so the two could speak alone, but when she turned around, Manzano pulled out a knife that he had brought with him and began stabbing her multiple times. The next day, they discovered her mutilated body despite neighbors hearing screams coming from her apartment. Police initially questioned Sarah's other friend, but later discovered about Garcia Manzano. When they found him and questioned him, he confessed to the crime without any remorse. This second story is said to be taken from the actual police report. Regardless of which version of the story is true, the fact remains that a young woman's life was cruelly taken from her without warning. Number 2. Adam Mann. After divorcing in 2007, Adam Mann and his ex-wife, Lisa Beverly, didn't exactly have an amicable relationship. Mann, from Welling, London, and Beverly, from Plumstead, were having an increasingly volatile relationship. On September 16, 2009, Mann called the child support agency and told them he had no more money for child support and that he would not be paying. But just a day before, Beverly called the CSA and told them Mann lied about being unemployed. As a result, he was sent a letter demanding payments of £400. Beverly then updated her Facebook profile with a message saying, "Now who's laughing? You got dumped big time by the CS, so now leave us alone for good. Your son hates you, and so do I." The following day, Lisa Beverly was found dead in her home. She had been brutally attacked, stabbed several times, and her neck slashed with a knife. Her 5-year-old son ended up finding her body in the living room, covered in a pool of blood. The child called his grandfather, as he was taught to do whenever his mother would go into a diabetic coma. But instead of finding his mother in a state like that, Stephen Beverly was confronted with the sight of his mother's dead body. Adam Mann was arrested for killing his ex-wife. He initially denied the killing, saying Beverly had contacted him to help her stage a robbery at their home for insurance. When he got there, he found her dead, but still took several items. He never checked on his son or called emergency services. During the trial, of course, the jury found Mann guilty of murdering his wife. He's been sentenced to 24 years in prison. Number 1. Farmville Murders. It started with MySpace. Richard McCroskey III was a 20-year-old aspiring horrorcore rapper from Castro Valley, California. Known to his friends and fans as Sicko Sam, he often posted his music online on MySpace. It was on this same platform he met 16-year-old Emma Niederbrock. Emma was also into horrorcore and lived with her mother, Professor Deborah Kelly, at their Farmville, Virginia home. On September 17, 2009, police were asked to do a welfare check. They visited the home of Dr. Deborah Kelly. Inside, they discovered several bodies, all of them bludgeoned to death. 3 of them were found in the downstairs bedroom, while another body was found in the upstairs bedroom. It turns out, days before the killing, Emma and her friend, Melanie, went to Michigan to watch a horrorcore concert. Together with them was McCroskey. He had flown from California to visit Niederbrock and watch the concert with her. Both Deborah and Pastor Mark Niederbrock took the trio to the concert. Even though the couple had separated already, they were still involved in raising their daughter. Once they were in Michigan, there seems to have been a falling out between Niederbrock and McCroskey. According to reports, McCroskey was mad when he found out Emma sent several messages to somebody else while there. Once they returned to Virginia, he became distraught in the relationship because he thought he and Emma were seeing each other exclusively. It's unclear when the actual murder took place, but it's believed to have occurred the late evening of September 15, 2009. Thought McCroskey attacked Emma's friend Melanie, who was sleeping on the sofa at the time. After that, he headed to Dr. Kelly's room upstairs before heading downstairs to Emma's bedroom. McCroskey used a ball-peen hammer to strike each victim in the head. According to the autopsy, it's likely no one woke up during the attack since there were no defensive wounds. As for Pastor Mark Brock, he visited the home 3 days later. McCroskey then attacked him in the living room and later moved the bodies there to try to clean the den. At some point, McCroskey even recorded himself on video, noting he would need to pay for his crimes. Before the murders were discovered, Melanie Wells' mother called the police to do a welfare check on her daughter. When authorities headed to the Kelly home, they spoke with the man there, who was actually McCroskey. He told officers Wells was out to the movies with a friend, and they didn't investigate further. The following day, Wells' mother called police again, and so the officers headed back to the home. McCroskey had already left by then, and that's when police discovered the bodies inside. Oddly, as McCroskey left the home, he used Mark Niederbrock's 2000 Honda. He was stopped by a deputy and given a summons for driving without a license. The officer who issued the summons didn't find him suspicious at all, and it was only later that they realized they had let go a murder suspect. They later found McCroskey at the Richmond International Airport on September 18th. He was trying to get home to California but didn't have enough money to pay the difference for his ticket. McCroskey was charged with 6 counts of capital murder. He pleaded guilty to 4 of them and was sentenced to life in prison. So there were 6 insane murders caused by
Well,
Scam you, where you at?
so what's going on, son? What? Let's pull up.
What's up, young boy? Where you at? To the cook shop, drop the location. Drop the location, I'm gonna pull up. Nigga, drop the location. Drop the location. You live, black man, oh, my mama go, nigga ain't never go out no type of have pizza. I don't have to turn it up in my yeah. Look, we finna push up though, drop the location.
That coronavirus, COVID 19. I put injection on him for the coronavirus.
There's a lot of things down here close to where you reside at. What are you gonna do? Bro? Ain't gonna be nothing in his lap, bro. Ain't gonna be nothing in his lap, bro. He got one for himself. Ain't gonna be no in his lap.
What is it?
Alligators are basically waterproof. Waterproof avery labels, which don't need to breathe, are actually waterproof.
Tonight, Brenda Santiago and her family are memorializing her cousin, 13-year-old Isabella Cortez, who died during a carjacking in Pico Rivera.
It's hard for us. What happened?
Hard because Isabella either fell out or was thrown from her family's van as she and her 8-year-old brother were inside.
The car was going, it looked to be 55, 60 miles an hour.
It happened on Whittier Boulevard this afternoon. The Cortez family van had been parked outside this restaurant. Mom and Dad were inside while their 4 children were waiting in the van. That's when LA County Sheriff's investigators say 27-year-old Jose Aguilar jumped in. Isabella's 18-year-old sister and 11-year-old brother managed to get out, but the 2 other children were still inside as he allegedly drove away. The 8-year-old boy suffered major injuries while Isabella died at the scene.
She was friendly with people. She didn't have any problems or anything. She was super nice.
Detectives say Aguilera got into a crash down the street, then tried to carjack another car a few miles away. At that time, the second family was at a fruit stand.
The dad, who was trying to buy the fruit, jumped back into the car, choked the guy out, and that's when the fruit guys came up and helped him, pulled him out of the car.
Even though Aguilar has been arrested, Isabella's parents now have to tend to her injured brothers and sister.
My aunt and uncle are at the hospital with the other kids.
Detectives say Aguilar was recently arrested and released on felony possession of a dagger and vandalism with 0 bail. He was also on probation on other charges. In Pico Rivera, Jeff Nguyen, KCAL 9 News.
God protect me. I'm a young black man, doing all that I can to stay.
What happened to my music?
Oh, when I look around
Cut that out.
and I see what's being done to mankind, every day I'm being hung to this grave. My people don't want no trouble. We better go struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. So many thoughts in my head. Will I live or will I end up dead? Is it gonna be or sequel? No matter where I be, there's no place safe for me. Oh, I'm not asking for too much. So Lord, please help. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna
So
live.
even though I wasn't playing, that shit still just used my motherfucking money. Or like took my credits or something, because I know I didn't play that whole. Yeah, I had got 10. That shit's weird.
just wanna live. God protect me. I'm a young black man, doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being home to this rain. My people don't want no trouble. We've got it all struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. Just I just wanna live. God protect me. So many thoughts in my head. Will I live or will I end? I'm not asking for too much. So Lord, please help. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. This is my battle cry. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna.
Hey, take a Bud Light Seltzer.
Yeah, sure thing.
What's this?
It's Bud Light Seltzer Mango.
Sip initiated.
Shall we like it?
Commencing happy face.
Oh, too much. Bud Light Seltzer, unquestionably good.
Spiny Batch Chimpanzee.
A bizarre creature known as the spiny-backed chimpanzee has been reportedly seen in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Live me. Why is you acting like a bitch, my nigga? I got 50 views, 50 viewers, and I ain't on the front page so I can monitor my shit. What's the hate for? Can you cut the hate out, please? That's crazy. How many times I gotta refresh this page until I see my...
Unlike other creatures, the alleged sightings of this mysterious creature are quite recent. The creature was first reported by a member of the United States Navy who was stationed in the Democratic Republic of Congo sometime between 1997 and 2002. According to the Navy officer who wanted to remain anonymous, his unit encountered 13 strange bipedal chimpanzees. The group of chimpanzees was trying to take down other animals. They were 4 to 5 feet tall and had a grey colour. However, the most distinctive feature of these chimpanzees was the series of spines on their backs. Whenever these mysterious animals became agitated, the spines on their backs stood up like a porcupine's quills. The Navy officer also stated that his team members had a 3-minute video of these strange animals, but that the video...
Oh, this nigga. Talk too long, quiet for me. Bitch.
Five strange mysteries that will freak you out. Strange stories surround us everywhere, but some of them simply stand out over the rest. Cases on this list take the word strange to a whole new level. These are the 5 strange mysteries that will freak you out.
Live me. Quit acting like a hoe, bruh. Put my shit on future.
Number 5. AC and Carolyn Worthy. It was 12:43 a.m. on October 16, 1989, when firefighters rushed to the Worthy home in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It was a rented home located about a mile from Interstate 59, just off Alabama Highway 216.
One nigga at work.
When they managed to control the fire, investigators entered the house to find both Caroline and AC Worthy inside. The couple had been shot dead. At 55 years old, Carolyn was working as a choir director in the Baptist church. Meanwhile, 68-year-old AC was a World War II vet and was working as an officer at the Bessemer Veterans of Foreign Wars. The couple were wealthy, and in fact, during their death, they were just living in a rental home while their 10,000 square foot permanent residence was being built. On the night of the murder, they had headed home after church. Police believe as soon as they pulled into their driveway, they were shot. Afterwards, their bodies were dragged inside and the property set on fire. The killer had taken jewelry, along with some cash, but other valuable items were left untouched. A month after the murders were publicized, investigators received a phone call from officers in Florida. They said they had a similar case that occurred in January, just 9 months prior. The victims were also an older couple, 72-year-old Robert McRae Sr. and his wife, 70-year-old Catherine. They were found dead inside their home on January 29th. Their death was discovered when 2 neighborhood children dropped by the home but found 2 ski masks in the backyard. The children got scared and told a neighbor. Police were called, and inside is where they found the couple dead. Like the Worthies, the McRaes had been shot in the head execution style. Curiously, Mrs. McRae was placed in a pair of thumb cuffs. The killer took Robert's wallet, and also left with a diamond ring of Catherine's. Despite this, police believe the robbery wasn't the main motive, but instead the murders were. Aside from similarities in just the victims' profiles, both cases were connected when police discovered the killers used a 124-grain 9mm Israeli TZZ cartridge. It's a Uzi type of weapon not commonly used by burglars. Since the two cases were now linked, various agencies, including the FBI, have since investigated them. They believe that these weren't contract killings and more than one person committed the crimes. They say the murders were planned meticulously, though, and involved the killers stalking their victims. At least one report received by police noted a man was spotted watching the Worthy home using a scope at least 4 months prior to them being killed. Today, both the cases still remain open. Number 4, Cassie Federer. On September 13, 1999, 19-year-old Louisiana State University psychology student Cassie Federer had just finished class and returned to her Park Place apartment around 3:30 p.m. She locked and bolted her door after she went inside, but moments later, someone kicked in that front door, chased her around the apartment, shot, and killed her. A bullet went straight through her lungs and then her head. When she died, she still had her phone in her hands. An hour later, her body was discovered by the building manager. Police arrived and they found her dog shut inside the bedroom. They combed the scene and couldn't find anything amiss except for 2 bullet holes and a missing backpack. Later, they found a glove which didn't belong to Cassie or her roommate. They speculated that the glove belonged to the killer and tested it for DNA evidence. They did manage to obtain a sample, but when it was run through the database, it didn't match any known people at the time. So for years, Cassie's case went cold. Her family was devastated, and there seemed to be no leads to follow. For 19 years, the case sat on the desks of detectives waiting to be solved. Within that time, detectives tried running the DNA through several databases, but no results ever came up. But when they tried again in 2018, they finally got a hit. The DNA in the glove found in the apartment was matched to a man accused of multiple rapes and murders, 49-year-old Travis Green. Green was already on...
You got four players on the feature page, for real? My shit can't go up there? Lie to me, cuz. You be with that bullshit.
On death row in Livingston, Texas, for raping and murdering another 19-year-old girl from Houston, Texas, just 11 days before killing Cassie. In 1988, Green was also named a perpetrator in the killing of 82-year-old Margaret McGinnis from West Houston. She was sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Since Green was already serving death row, though, Baton Rouge police said they wouldn't step in to bring Green to Baton Rouge for trial. But they will be stepping in and bringing the case against him if he is released, pardoned, or his death sentence is overturned for any reason. Number 3, Henryville, Indiana. On April 28, 1974, 8-year-old Richard Sweeney left his home on Pixley Knob Road in Henryville, Indiana to go play. But when the young boy failed to return that evening, his parents called police and reported him missing. At around 6 p.m., police officer John Boer then found the boy's body. Sweeney was discovered fully clothed at the Blue Lick auction barn, which wasn't exactly a traditional farm building, but more like a giant yard sale or pawn store, according to locals. Richard was on the second floor, buried underneath stacks of boxes and old clothing. The barn was located just a short way from his home. It was discovered he had been sexually assaulted, he was strangled, then gagged and asphyxiated. His hands were tied behind his back, but the type of binding was never released. It's believed he died from choking on his own vomit because his mouth gag was too tight. The young boy's killing has never been solved. However, he wouldn't be the only mystery death in that town. Several years later, on June 9, 1977, 15-year-old Jeffrey Burkett was last seen entering a black pickup truck around Blue Lick Road. Jeffrey was small and thin for his age. He stood at 5 foot 1 inches tall and weighed just over 100 pounds. When he didn't return home that evening, his brother contacted police the next morning and reported him missing. By 3:45 that afternoon, authorities said his body was found. According to them, the teenager was discovered about 30 yards off the road inside Clark State Forest. He was face down, fully clothed, and with his hands arched over his head and wrists bound with wire. During the autopsy, it was determined he fought hard to get free and had many defensive wounds, but was heavily beaten and sexually assaulted. There were fractures on his skull, but his primary cause of death was strangulation. Another death and disappearance would occur before the year ended in that area. On September 27, 1977, 19-year-old Donald Abel had just finished his morning class at around 11 a.m. He told a friend he was walking into town that day, headed out the door, and was never seen again. For 2 weeks, no one knows what happened to the teen, but on October 9th, a group of walnut hunters stumbled across his body at the bottom of a 27-foot ravine. He was found fully clothed and had been beaten to death. He had a fracture on his skull, which was inconsistent with the fall. Unlike the other two prior victims, there were no signs of sexual assault on the body or any sign of strangulation either. Although it wasn't mentioned in the official reports, local rumors said that Donald's hands were also bound behind his back when he was found. For years, the three murders haunted the small town. Although many believe a single killer stalked the area, police eventually believed that there were three separate killers involved, one for each victim. For Richard Sweeney's parents, they think they have a good idea on who the killer might be. At one point, Mrs. Sweeney even confronted their suspect, and the person ran and hid, leading them to further believe in his guilt. The identity of the Sweeney's person of interest has been kept hidden since he hasn't officially been charged or linked in the investigation. There have been several attempts at solving the murders, and two reinvestigations occurred in 1983 and again in 1999, but even today, the cases remain unsolved. Number 2. Phony torso killing. It was October 11, 1991, and for 62-year-old Colin Oliver, it was an ordinary walk home. As he was heading down Broxfield Lane in Bolney, southern England, he stopped and opened a gate that led to a field. He went to the wooded area to urinate, and it was then he found a piece of carpet hidden in the undergrowth. Inside that carpet was a bloody torso. Oliver walked straight to the Burgess Hill police station and told them what he found.
No!
Police described the victim as a white male with a protruding belly. He was approximately 60 years old during the time of death.
I didn't want to
Both
put
the
my shit all
victim's head
in.
and hands were cut off to impede identification, and those have never been found.
Wow.
The arms have been cut off in different
that?
lengths. One arm was chopped 6 inches below the elbow, while the other was cut 2 inches below the elbow. It was cut this way because one arm seemed to have an identifying tattoo. Police think the killer used an axe or bolt cutter to chop up the body. The victim had a small star-shaped mole on his right thigh and was wearing turned-up trousers along with a blue shirt with a distinctive pocket motif. Police found a possible suspect in December of 1991 when a local real estate agent spoke with them and said there was a rented house on Copyhold Lane, 1.5 miles from where the body was discovered. That rented home had been abandoned for no reason, raising the suspicion of the agent. When police went to the property, they found a Penthouse magazine with an article talking about dismembering bodies. There were also numbers scrawled all over the pages. The people who rented the home were Joseph Nepper and Cornelia Tussel from Dresden, Germany. The two rented it in September of '91 and paid for 6 months in advance. On October 9th, they abruptly left 2 days before the body was discovered. Joseph apparently was being sought in Germany for business fraud and had been using the pseudonym Dr. Matthias Hermann. The following year, Joseph was caught in Spain and he admitted to intending to start a fraud operation, but he said he had no clue about the dead body. By August of '92, police had to release him because there was no evidence linking him to the murder. So without movement in the case, the torso
fuck that. I didn't go on my turn. Okay. Oh, wait. I got 100 up there. I only play 50. I just wanna win. She over there fucking that knuckle up. Yeah, you. Oh. God, I almost thought that was the battle. I just wanna win. They made me go all in. I don't know why.